Corey Good has talked about, they actually put the Schumann resonance in these ships to ground people.
Oh, that's interesting. That may be a newer development, something that we weren't doing. I mean, they may have been doing something like that as well, but it was something that could get discombobulated and you could get thrown out of balance. It could,
he
go
said it
squirrely.
was necessary to keep people's sanity.
Yeah,
To function
absolutely.
inside the
Absolutely.
ship.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised if there were, I mean, I knew there were lots of fields in the vehicle that were present for that, so I don't think I'd ever heard it called that, but I wasn't a tech guy about ships, so I was a pilot. I got to talk to the mechanics a bit and look under the hood once or twice, but we really weren't supposed to. So as pilots, we weren't supposed to know too much about the mechanical engineering. We weren't supposed to be looking at the parts. We weren't supposed to be thumbing through the manuals. But I got a really good relationship with my plane captain, which is what they call the mechanics. And so he, we talk stuff, and every once in a while, if I could get him, every once in a while we could get whiskey, and if I could bring him whiskey, then he could let me thumb through the manual.
Right. A couple more questions here before we go to the audience. I've heard everything, several people have said everything on Star Trek that you ever saw was true. All those episodes were true.
Except we don't teleport, we don't reorganize people's molecules. That tends to go wrongly. Okay, that really is a very advanced technology and species that can do that. It's very advanced. We create portals and jump gates and put people through it, and that's what we call teleporting. So we definitely have that technology, but that's the only thing that I would say that we haven't been able to duplicate or do that's like Star Trek level technology, all that other stuff we can do. Now, I haven't had food out of the replicators, but I've heard that they don't necessarily, they're not real good yet. They're kind of like 4 different kinds of flavored paste. So,
Pot roast.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had it, so I don't know. We actually, like I said, we had cafeteria food. We had kitchens.
So you had a mess hall on your ship, or?
Well, on Mars and the MDF we did, and on the ship as well. Yeah, we had regular, galley mess hall.
Really?
And kitchen.
So that was a big ship.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, yeah. The Nautilus is probably a mile long.
Wow.
It's big. It's really big.
And did you have other craft in there that were you like a mothership with other?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, we had I think 10 fighter squadrons, 10 air wings actually. Which, let's see, 10 air wings, 4 squadrons per air wing. So that's 40 squadrons.
Wow.
I mean, it was a lot.
You had a ship a mile long going 80K.
No. The Nautilus could go much faster.
Whoa.
Yeah, it also had the ability to create jump gates. So it could create jump gates for us to go to jump somewhere, or it could create jump gates for itself and travel faster depending on where it needed to go. But it could go way faster than that. Wow. I couldn't tell you that's classified. I mean, that's beyond my pay grade to know what its top speed was, but I know that it was faster than that.
What's the furthest out in space you've been now?
I mean, about as far as Pluto. So, I mean, we talk in sort of astronomical units or astros when we talk about big distances to 12, maybe 13 astros.
So the edge of our solar system.
About the not to the Oort cloud, but probably between to the edge of Pluto, between Pluto and the Oort cloud, but not that far out.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Scott, a lot of the people are a little shy. They have to think a little bit longer before they get a question.
Okay, does anybody want to start with any questions, or we want to talk?
I will, right there.
Okay, come on up.
So I'm just curious if with Paris, if you've heard any intel about that.
We talked about that before.
I have not had a chance to talk to my Brigadier General yet and ask him anything that they know of or what their intelligence reports are showing so far. We had a brief chance to chat, and the only question I was really asking was false flag, yes or no, and he was like, no, this is they really blew people up. So this wasn't us pretending to blow people up.
This is
they
the
blew
first
people
question.
up. So, but yeah, I'm sure we'll know more as time goes by, but it happened too soon. I haven't had a chance to get any kind of briefing. I don't know what our people have looked into as far as what we've done as far as intelligence work on this one yet. We've really looked into, so I haven't had a chance to find out. So unfortunately, I don't know anything except what has sort of been on the news, and that, it's not a false flag. So.
Yeah, that was the first question I asked him when he showed up tonight backstage. Does everybody know we're talking about Paris? Does everybody hear about this?
No.
126 people were 29. 5 or 6 incidents of terrorist acts
6. I think
Yeah.
at least 6.
Throughout the city.
Yeah.
And this was last night,
Yeah.
last evening.
Yeah. They're up to about 350 wounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Americans have been killed, and they're all saying it's ISIS, of course.
Yeah, Islamic State's taking responsibility, and every other bit of evidence that we would suggest that this is their next thing was, yeah.
So our prayers go out to the people of Paris and the French. It's just a tragedy. If you have a question, come on up and you can ask your question. We need to get you on the mic so everyone can hear you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question is, I know you answered about who runs the country. Well, my question is, what role, if any, does the Illuminati play in running the country and your space program?
That's kind of a complicated discussion about terminology, because a lot of sort of blame of activity that people aspire to be Illuminati is not what I would call to be responsible or to blame for by members of what are known to be the actual Illuminati. Now, this is because some people think the Illuminati is this consortium of people conspiring to rule the world, and it's not. The Illuminati is a social club of members of elite families who participate in sort of horrific child practices, and essentially it's just a club, and they are some crossover with Bilderbergers and New World Order kind of people, but you really have these socio-political money family organizations that are more based around pretty sort of identifiable money corporate families and sort of military intelligence sort of projects and branches and sort of who has what number in funding. And that kind of tells you more about what the chess players on the board of who's really controlling the world are. And we certainly have ET groups who are manipulating in that, and we certainly have weird people who have weird ideas about all kinds of things participating in that. But the actual Illuminati group is a club, it's a social club, and they certainly participate and do terrible, horrible things. But they get a lot of blame as name blame, but it's a misnomer. It's unfortunate that it's difficult to try and explain to everybody. It's not the Illuminati, that's not, that's kind of like, saying the Sadists did it when they're not here anymore. That's kind of just laying blame to something that's not attributed to what's actually happening in the world. So all I can really say to that is that it's a confusion of definition of names, groups, and identities when people say it's an Illuminati thing or an Illuminati scheme. Nah, I mean, it's somebody's scheme. I mean, if you have evidence that there's a scheme or conspiracy of some kind, it's somebody's. And there are other evidence that you can track money, names, and personnel to kind of figure out who's responsible for what. But to just say the Illuminati did it, that's kind of like saying the devil did it. And, since devil's a fictional character that doesn't exist, that from sort of Zoroastrianism, then, you can say the Illuminati did it, but that's the same as saying the devil did it, or saying the same the boogeyman did it, which is, attributing actual actions to someone that's not really an actual character on the stage of people who do really bad, globally dominating things. Members of the Illuminati do terrible things, but, they're really Bush League evil, to be honest, when you want to talk about the real global dominator kind of evil. That's like your varsity level evil. These guys are junior league.
Randy, we've heard a lot of talk about the Dracos.
Sure, Alpha Draconians,
yes.
yeah, mean, ugly reptiles,
Yes.
no fun at all.
Can you comment a little bit on that? Are they controlling this government? Or
No. They're not controlling it anymore. They've lost their main grip of power and control that they've had. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't people who are still their toady and their bitch who will do whatever they want or they say. Henry Kissinger being among them. So he's such a tool.
And
He's such a
Shaney.
Shane's such a tool. He's such a tool. I know both those guys are such tools. And yeah, they're definitely.
Did they get him?
Let's hope. Fingers crossed. So all I can really say is that they, from what we're hearing, they're trying to negotiate, and they're not the type to negotiate if they're not in a position of strength. I mean, they wouldn't be negotiating unless they're in a position of weakness. I'm of the opinion that certain people, certain beings, if I had them on the ropes and they were in their moment of weakness, I might demonstrate an act of compassion and give them a moment. If it was a draconian, I would kill them utterly. They deserve, I really have to be specific about this because I believe that it is fair to say that beings deserve compassion and mercy, but beings who have done certain things and the way they have seen us and treated us, they deserve none. They deserve no mercy, no quarter, and they deserve to be destroyed unto dust. And so there is nothing they deserve from us other than to be destroyed and eliminated from our space, and so that they can never return. And those who have been here and committed the crimes need to be punished. So they're trying to find amnesty, they're trying to get out of it. I don't think we should let them. I think we should hold them accountable. I think we should imprison them if possible. I think we should hold them for as long as we can, put them away forever if possible. Because I think killing people, sometimes you let them free from their body and you're just kind of not really making them accountable. Throw them in prison walls for 1,000 years if they live that long. I think that's fair. But they have a large galactic presence. They're kind of like, you know, the Snidely Whiplash of the galaxy. They're just the bad guy for every scenario. And that's just their MO. You know, they're ass kickers who not too many people really can stand up to. So why stop being bullies? You know, it's kind of their MO. Why stop being bullies if it works for you? So I could say more, I guess, but we don't like them. We shouldn't like them. We should make them go away, and we should not want to give them a hug. They don't deserve a hug. They don't want a hug. They would not give you a hug. You're a hamburger to them. So to most farmers, if a cow tried to give them a hug, you think that would really change their opinion about hamburger? It really wouldn't. It really wouldn't. They would just be like, "Stupid cow, don't give me a hug. You're hamburger." So, I mean, that's really the same view. They see you as lower on the food chain. You will never be equal to them in their opinion. So there's no reason.
So are we in the process of neutralizing the Dracos?
We certainly, some of these fireballs that we're seeing vehicles being shot down in the sky, some of them are draconian ships that are not making it. They're running for it. They're going, let's make a break for it. And some of them are like, well, we think we can get through the shield, or, you know, we set up a D-harmonic resonator and maybe that'll work. No, you know, that didn't work. So they're trying whatever they can. They're making a run for it. It's not working. They're getting shot down one after the other. So we'll see what happens.
There's a lot of
they're
space
desperate. I want to say is this: desperation is a stinky cologne.
Was that the one over LA?
What did they look like?
Was that
How many saw the movie Jupiter Ascending?
I haven't seen it yet. Sorry.
There's Dracos in that movie.
I've heard that. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment, unfortunately. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Great.
Okay, so Earthlings have a galactic presence.
Absolutely.
That's hard to reconcile. We've trashed the planet. We have world hunger, and it seems to me that we would have been quarantined. We wouldn't even be allowed to leave the planet due to the way we treat it.
Sure. Well, that has more to do with the fact that some of the people who have been able to arrest control from other people in this world have done bad management with it. Some extraterrestrials see a long-term view of planet Earth, which is, well, if this group mismanages it and we have to, you know, get rid of some of them and bring them back down to 100 million or so, which is enough for us to sort of, you know, populate the Earth over time. So in their worldview of long-term sort of galactic history, if they have to bring us down to 100 million and sort of start over, they'll do it. But they'll give us quite a lengthy opportunity to try and fix it ourselves. And so they do understand that it isn't just about one group of people that's, you know, evil and in control. There's a struggle. That's why we have a civil war. That's why we have, you know, we don't have elections necessarily of people who really are, you know, I know people want to say they're all secretly in the same, no, they hate each other. They wouldn't hate each other as much. They wouldn't fight as viciously and hard as they do. You can feel their hate. I mean, they really hate each other. They would be way nicer to each other if it was just more of a routine. So there wouldn't be a fight if just it was one group of evil people in control. So they're still giving us a chance to work it out. They believe it's still possible.
It's a lot more complex, and there's still a lot. They still allow us to go out into the galaxy like we have.
Well, and it's another thing to answer to that is when they look at the personnel of the space program as how they behave when they're out in space. Well, they have to say, well, you all are very well behaved Earthlings. So I guess we have to say you're not all bad. And so some of your best are, we can say you're acceptable and good to hang out with, and you can be civilized at the table and not slobber on everybody, and that's cool. So, I mean, they hold the people that they've met and they communicate with to sort of a more, oh, you humans aren't so bad. They don't necessarily look, oh, well, everyone trying to come up in the galaxy's got social problems. So a lot of, that is like, well, we understand you got problems back home, but as long as you're working it out, we'll give you some leeway. Because most species have a historical memory of what it was like to come into that transition. And no one has ever had an easy time of it. No one has ever had, oh, well, that was effortless, going from pre-galactic civilization to galactic civilization. It's not even like pulling out a sliver. No, it's painful and difficult for everybody. So everyone understands we're going through a difficult process. And we'll either get there or we'll get called back and then we'll have to try again. And that's the long-term view. And I say to that, to them, maybe it doesn't matter whether we do this long-term view or we do it now. I say it matters. So I say, come on, everybody, let's get together and do this, right? And so
that's what your program is about.
Absolutely, yeah. If we all accept that we're psionic beings and we all accept our psionic evolution, then we'll just all be living in psionically emergent psionic civilization, and that's where we get real fundamental change. Because, like I said, things change. Like people can't lie to each other anymore. Not to mention all the other things that kind of go with that, but that's the big one.
Randy, do you concur that there are breakaway Earth civilizations?
Oh yeah, that's what the cabal, the colonies on Mars, what we sort of refer to as the Martian cabal or the Mars cabal, was all about. Was they had what was supposed to be part of the preservation continuance of Planet Earth program became, hey, fuck those guys. We should just set up our own thing, flush them down the toilet, and then start over. Yeah, fuck those guys. So what started out as what's a generally good idea for the preservation of human life became a conspiracy routine for a militant group of people to try and create a whole new civilization, whole new ball of wax on Mars, and then eventually flush the whole planet Earth thing down the toilet, and then give it, let the planet sort of fix itself vegetative-wise over sort of the next 50, 100 years with nobody on it, and then come back and repopulate the planet and build civilization anew. Good plan, huh? Except y'all don't get to live in that plan, so it's not a good plan for us. Yeah. Good for them. It's a great plan for them. It's a horrible plan for everybody else.
I understand all of those things and how it was that we have been mismanaged because we've not been allowed to have the technology that already exists. So one of the good news is that I listened to in one of your interviews this morning was what you had to say about the Navy no longer using oil and how that's impacting the oil industry.
They certainly are making the transition that they have a saltwater fuel process now that they can make a fuel source straight out of salt water. So that means they're going to be weaning their planes, and they have to convert the engines so that they'll run on this new saltwater fuel. But it's essentially just a matter of changing some parts. So they are changing the generators on the ships and the aircraft and other machinery to be non-petroleum based. Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
And because if people don't know this, the United States Navy is perhaps the single largest customer of big oil in the world. Yeah, like the biggest customer ever because of just how much fuel they burn through. So the fact them going off of oil is big oil losing its biggest customer.
Is this one of the reasons that the oil prices are dropping now?
A lot actually. The practical on the numbers of that has a lot to do with fracking.
Okay.
So fracking is producing a lot of cheap local petroleum products here in the United States, which is bringing prices down into the toilet. Now, the only thing that I can say that's good about that is that as we get to know more petroleum products, we're probably going to have a glut of it for a little while, so we're not necessarily going to see the crazy price inflation before we get to just sort of do away with it. We're not going to jump up to $6 a gallon gas before we're out of gas. We're going to have transition options while we still have a bunch of cheap oil left, is what it looks like. Unfortunately, the damage that we're probably going to do, because fracking chemicals are horrible for the crust and for the mantle and so forth, it's awful. It's going to be a long time either dealing with more earthquakes, water tables that light on fire and things like that that are not going to be good for us. But one of the Saudi princes basically made a statement earlier this year that we're not going to see above $50 a barrel oil again. And he was lamenting that Saudi Arabia could no longer control oil prices. That they used to be able to say, well, if we just hold back, that'll bring the prices up. If we, push it in, that brings the prices down. Well, there's so much other production that Saudi Arabia can hold back production and someone else will fill the bill. So they no longer have the control over oil prices. But I'm just going to fuck the Saudi oil cartel, fuck their control of everybody else. The fact that they no longer have control of the oil market world, fuck those sons of bitches. So that's a good thing. And that's progress. But we're going to get there. It's still going to be a little messy, but I don't think we're going to see the crazy oil prices because they can't control it anymore. And we have all these insane, cheap oil price things that are coming along. But we're seeing also these amazing alternative energy projects.
Yes.
The Canadian company that's building a saltwater generator that essentially runs, so it's a little portable generator that runs on salt water. They've got the prototype is coming out. They're doing demonstrations. They're getting their whole industrial, sort of production protocol thing going. They've really been sort of having to delay the process for a number of reasons, but I've kind of been on top of this one, and it's going to happen. So we're getting there. We have an automobile produced by a European auto company that has a saltwater engine. It runs on salt water. Okay, so we're making these transitions. I mean, at the moment, you got to have $100,000 to buy the car, the fancy car. But eventually, we're going to get there. So we're seeing these things come in already while we're having this cheap oil thing, and eventually it's just going to it's going to work itself out. It's just unfortunate that we're going to have this sort of horrible sort of environmental thing.
Well, what are your views on the Kesh Foundation?
I don't know enough about it, but I've heard really good things that they're getting ready to also to release some sort of amazing
Plasma technology.
Yeah, amazing alternative energy process. I'm like a lot of things. If I'm not right on top of it, I'm waiting to see something. So there's a few things I know more about others. I don't know much more than I've heard fantastic things about it. So fingers crossed that's on the level and it all comes out. I'd love to see it.
Can you tell us some more about the Philadelphia experiment? Was it a precursor to the space program and time travel?
It actually would qualify as among some of the first major sort of covert military space program experiments in we got this technology. We're not sure what it does. It spins around, and if we plug it in, it makes a lot of whistle sounds. We don't really know what it does, but if we plug it into something bigger, we think it might be cool. So we really didn't know what that technology was going to do. Basically, we had this rooms full of tubes, right, to sort of act as the transducer to this alien technology, so we could convert our energy into this device and sort of make it work using our power regulators. Was this very fascinating way of integrating this mid-20th century vacuum tube technology and this advanced extraterrestrial technology. Blows my mind, right? Yeah. But what they thought that it was, we've seen these ships just blink out, go invisible. This is a cloaking device. It's an invisibility shield. Not.
Yeah, exactly.
But, that's what we think it is. So we're going to plug it in and turn it on. Oh, oops, it's actually a field that turns your ship out of phase with the dimensional reality that you're in and sends you through hyperspace, and then you come out somewhere else. Oops. So the poor men who, were infused in the bulkheads when they came out and either died a quick or slow, horrible, painful death being stuck in a bulkhead you couldn't get out of. sad way to go. But it was definitely will this work? I don't know, maybe. And they gave it a shot, and a lot of people died. So that was one of those, well, we know it's not an invisibility cloak now. But unfortunately, yeah, a lot of people died. It was sad, tragic experiment that cost a lot of people their lives.
The Eldridge was the third ship in the test.
Other questions that we have from the audience? Yeah.
Can you share what you know about Nibiru or Planet X? It's coming up a lot around here.
So I hear people talking about such things, and my understanding, if we're really talking about sort of the, we're talking about Nibiru, Marduk, if we're talking about that 12th planet, according to Sitchin's math, it's out at its apogee, okay? So it's about at its farthest point away from it. We should not see it for another 1,300, whatever, 1,500 years. It's going to be a while. So it's not coming anytime soon. There are other very large objects that have been reported coming in and out of the solar system, planet-sized objects, but not displaying a gravitational pull, so not having the solid mass, possibly being sort of out of phase, energy, consciousness objects, possibly living things floating through space the size of planets. Right? Blow your mind. It blows my mind when I hear about that. I'm like, what? Are you kidding? Yeah, I mean, well, and we've seen some. We've seen some of them, but they're not stuff that you're going to necessarily see with a telescope. You got to have the infrared and the UV scopes to see outside, visible light and stuff. But I've heard there's some crazy large objects coming in. But no, Nibiru out there, apogee, not coming around for a long time.
Now, I just want to finish up a question about the Dracos here.
Oh, sure.
In a second.
All right, no worries.
I've heard that we're in negotiations with. You mentioned
I've heard,
negotiations,
yes.
And this takes place on the Lunar LOC.
Right, Lunar Operations Command.
And there's supposed to be a galactic sort of big conference room up there. Have you heard about this, or can you confirm anything about any negotiations that are going on?
I mean, I've heard that
now?
there are. Yeah, I've heard that there are. I don't know much about. It's not my area, so I don't hear much about them. But I am to understand that they are happening. Yeah, and it's sort of backside of the moon is this DMZ. So
have you seen the LLC?
Oh yeah, I've been there.
You've been there.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times.
You
sure.
said you just saw part of it. You didn't see the whole.
Well, the
conference.
first visit. I mean, most of when I talk about was my first visit there. I made a couple other visits much later on, and then the last final return visit is a whole other visit that we got. There was a big banquet. Thank you for your service. I mean, it was great.
Have you
And
the gold watch?
No. But I have said Donald Rumsfeld gave us a speech to everyone. Thank you very much. So Donald Rumsfeld was there.
Lucky
We mostly sat in the back, and I mean, we normally didn't get much alcohol, like I said. So we sat in the back. Free drinks, hook me up. So we sat in the back and drank and didn't really care. But we got to dress up and get a big dinner.
So how big is?
Wherever it is, it's got to be right on the edge, kind of the dark side, because actually the big dome, you can kind of see the Earth popping up over the side. It's not like a full view, but it's like, oh, you can see the Earth coming up. So you do have this sort of Earth side view looking over the top. So it must be right there on the edge, but.
And the LLC has many levels below.
Yeah. I mean, it goes way deep from what I understand. So way deep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question?
Hi, Randy.
I've got two questions actually. One is.
One question.
The first question is, do you know anything about CERN, the Hadron Collider in Switzerland?
I know a few things about it. But, I think that a lot of what's being said about it is more hyperbolic rumor than reality. But I'm not saying that it's just a particle accelerator. Anyone who's looked at the configuration, if I get a little circle, it's got a big circle. I mean, it's like, that could rip a hole in time space if you weren't careful. So, I mean, there's certainly, I am, from what I understand, when they first turned it on, there was one of those, like, when they set off the first atomic bomb. We're not sure about this 3. It might burn the whole world and not stop. And so they were like, let's do it anyway. So I think there may have been some math and this could be the coolest particle accelerator experiment ever. Or we could blow a hole through the planet not sure about this 3. So there was some discussion about that. Now, there may be some other purposes and so forth, but I don't believe that it has the capability to sort of, rip some hole in space that it's going to let all the evil things through. I think that's a little Pandora's box, and that's a little sort of, embodiment of mythology. So I'm not saying it's a happy place of sunshine and ponies, but I think most of the demonization of it is a little exaggerated. So it's more somewhere in between of dangerous, probably not totally evil, certainly not like, the safest thing in the world. There's no way that it could be. But I'm glad I'm not anywhere near it. Let me just say that. But and it's also the kind of thing that if there is something that really goes wrong with something like that, you're either going to know about it or you're not, depending on how big of a problem it is. And chances are someone's either going to be able to deal with it or they're not. And it's kind of out of our hands too, really. Like, I know Simon was getting people to meditate on, calming it down or subduing it or stopping it or whatever. I mean, I applaud anybody's efforts to try and do anything of the kind if they feel that that's necessary. And certainly, like I said, it's, sketchy. But again, I think most of that is blown out of proportion and probably just bigger sort of exaggeration talking. Yeah. And,
The other question I had is, have you ever been to Venus?
No, never been. Never been. My understanding is that that's a dimensional frequency issue as well. Like their civilized world exists in sort of 4th dimensional density. So yeah, there's like methane and ammonia and stuff if we go there in our bodies. But yeah, if you can elevate your frequency, have a ship that can, shift, and go up to that level that I imagine and to understand it's quite lovely. But I know I've never been there. That is where the Hathor live. I mean, they do have the sort of the round faces and the little sort of amphibian ears. They do look like the faces on the Egyptian temples. So yeah, that's where they are.
Cool.
They are the Hathor. Just to be clear about that.
Next question.
Yeah, Randy, do you know anything about the stasis?
Go to the microphone, please.
Oh, I didn't even see that there.
Randy, can you hear me?
I can.
Do you know anything about stasis beings?
Is there another way to describe what that might mean? Because that's not a term I've ever heard. A stasis being.
Okay. There is actual photographs of these beings that look like Anunnaki. They're tall, they're giants, they got long red beards.
All right.
They're well preserved, and they apparently have been in stasis for quite a number of years now. They're waiting for some kind of event here on Earth, and they're going to wake up. And some of them have already been awakened, and apparently have been taken off the planet.
Yeah.
But these have been discovered all over the world.
Yeah.
These chambers, they're called stasis chambers.
Yeah. Okay. So
And these are tall beings.
Right. So when they discovered the tomb of Osiris, they discovered the tomb of Osiris. For those of you who don't know, and that's not a secret at all. In fact, Dr. Zahi Hawass, who I really affectionately call him the Grand Poobah of Egyptology, because over time, he's had that job forever, but over time they have changed his title. And every time they change his title, they add more words. And so, and so it's something like head of Egyptian antiquities, and I mean it's this, and Egyptology. I mean it's like 6 or 7 words long. And I mean they just keep making his title bigger and bigger, but it's the same job. And so I lovingly and affectionately call him the Grand Poobah of Egyptology. But and there are some people have accused him of stealing antiquities and stuff. I don't think that's the case. I think the programs that they're doing to get at some of that stuff is not stealing them. They're classified, so it's not stealing. I don't know what else to say about that, but I'm not certain to say that that's properly to blame him for that. But from everything that I have seen of him and of his presence, he is so ecstatic to want to talk about Egyptology. He is so ecstatic to want to share this stuff with people. And he's rolled out the discovery of the tomb of Osiris like 3 different times now. And the second time rolled it out with like actually a fake tomb because it made it more interesting. There's like a raised dais with a sarcophagus on it, and then like a moat. It's like lit up, and all these little obelisks around it, which is not like the original chamber, which is much more plain and just a square room. But right, I know, right? So it's totally a stage setup, But it's not a lie, because they did find the original tomb. There's this whole original event that they did, and they had it on, it was on television and everything. And then, but like everyone went, so? Like nobody got like the importance of, do you not understand that this is the first time that they have found a tomb of a god, a deity of the pantheon, like found that, like that's never happened. Kind of important, kind of significant. We might learn something here. I mean, that's a big deal. And for people to just go, so, Tomb of Osiris, what?
I know.
Not just any god, the head, the concho, right, of the pantheon, like the head guy, the CEO of the board, like that guy. And everyone just like, So he does this rollout. No one seems to pay attention. Over time, he builds this kind of setup and like tries to like, come on, everybody, and it's still like, people just don't seem to like have as much of an interest. But he's tried to roll out this discovery several times to talk about it, to like get people to have this discussion about it. But there is this very interesting story about how right after this happened, they discovered the tomb in about 1987. I happened to be visiting friends, and I ended up stayed in Colorado Springs for about 6 months. And Drunvalo Melchizedek came through town and gave a talk to a room full of people at the Colorado Convention Center, to a room full of people. And was very excited because he knew people that knew Dr. Hollis and had an associate there, and was very excited to tell everybody about the discovery of the tomb of Osiris. And then, oh no, this is all coming out, and everything, but he kind of blew the whistle too early. And so a week later, someone asked him about it in an interview, and he backpedaled. No, that's not what I said at all. People misunderstood me. And it was about a year to the day that I had come home from my job later at the time, and they were having the program, and Dr. Hollis was on television announcing the discovery of the tomb. So they waited about a year after the discovery to officially announce it. But Drunvalo was also excited. No, they're going to announce it next week. So he went ahead and just blew the whistle to the whole group and told us this story, but had to backpedal because apparently I told too soon. So, but I felt really fortunate to be in that room of about 400 people who heard that story, because everyone else got the backpedal version and we all got to hear the story, which was pretty cool. But part of the story is that when they they find this chamber that has a hole, a doorway, a trap door in the corner, a shaft that goes down 20 or 30 feet to another chamber, another shaft that goes down 30 feet to another chamber, to another shaft, to another chamber down to the bottom, like 3 separate chambers going down over like 90 or 100 feet, so from top to bottom. And when they get down to the bottom, they find a sarcophagus that's about 5 tons. The lid was like 2.5 tons. The lid is now in the Cairo Museum. And now, according to the story that Drunvalo told, that this assistant of Dr. Hollis told him, when they pulled off the sarcophagus lid, there was in fact a body, not a mummy, a body that was in stasis. There, see, I went all around full circles. So, we heard that story back in 1997, and that it was in fact the tomb of Osiris. So hearing someone telling about, okay, that sounds like we're in.
They found him in Ohio.
Sounds like we're hearing a theme here. That's interesting, but I'm not totally surprised. We do know that there was a site discovered in the Grand Canyon, 1800s actually,
right, exactly.
that was known to have artifacts that were from all over the world. It had Egyptian artifacts, Tibetan artifacts, all sorts of things. This is on record that the Smithsonian sent a guy who came and filled out a report and did the whole thing, and then went back to Washington and never got back, never returned. And then there was just and that particular part of the Grand Canyon is part of the you can't go there part. So 9 don't go, so whatever there they found, took the artifacts and whatever, they're in the big Smithsonian Museum or the underground like a national treasure or whatever, I don't know.
I think they're on Mars,
but who knows. But I find that a fascinating subject. So I'm not surprised if they found something here on, American soil, because we found other artifacts that give a demonstration that they've had global sort of transportation of
Apparently,
artifacts.
a chamber has been found in the state of Ohio.
That's
in this
fascinating.
country.
I'm going to have to look that up, and I want to know more about that, but okay.
Next question?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Very,
Thanks for
very
having me.
interesting. I have two questions. I'll make one is a little longer than the other. In your healing bed that you're wanting to build,
Right.
and using that with obviously, of course, with veterans. That's you know.
They get to be one of our first. After we can successfully do some, rats, monkeys, then
Oh.
yeah,
Oh.
then we'll go to people. But yeah, veterans get to be the first in line, so they get to be first. When we get all of them done, then we'll get to everybody else.
Yeah. There's a project that a couple of us are working on having to do with the child slavery, and
Okay, yeah.
it's quite in depth. And maybe at some
Oh,
time
yeah,
I could
yeah.
email you about that.
Absolutely.
Because I'm real interested in how this could help them, the children, get their lives back. We've got some avenues. There's a Dr. James Hart
Yes.
who has biocybernaut.
Yep.
You familiar with his
No,
work?
but I've
Heal
heard
your
the name.
alpha waves.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and he did some some different programs through the military and funding through the years. He's been very successful in integrating in 7 days of alpha wave training, multiple personality.
Right.
disorder.
No, that makes total sense that would happen. I mean,
Yeah.
if you had been to my psionics class, you would
I
have
would have
heard me
liked
talk
that.
about
I knew about it. I would have loved
brain waves, the alpha bridge, how all that connects to sort of your conscious and your subconscious anyway. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that that's a connector to that sort of healing activity, because that would make sense in how I understand brain waves and brain works and mind works.
Right. Okay.
So that is an area of which we can have lengthy discussion. So go ahead and I'll actually-
I'm Deborah, and I'll do that.
Okay, yeah,
I know
well,
Scott
yeah,
very
and we'll
well.
make sure we'll exchange some information, and we can
Okay.
definitely talk about that later. That's a lengthy conversation
you.
we can
Thank
get into
you,
now.
thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
No accidents. I just found out about
Yeah.
you coming yesterday.
Absolutely.
And then Vimana, the discovery
Sure.
over in Afghanistan, I think it was probably in the Kush area where they discovered one, 8 of our
Oh,
military
interesting.
few
No, I haven't
short
heard
years
about
ago. I was
that.
wondering if you knew anything about that.
Nope, haven't heard about that.
Supposedly, our military that went in, maybe 8, they disappeared.
Yeah,
So I was
sure.
wondering if you
that's-
might have any idea.
No,
They found one that seemed to be alive.
Right. Yeah, I have not heard anything about that, and
In
again,
a cave.
I just would not be surprised at all if that sort of thing was found in that area. That's an area that's been rife with that activity for a very long time, and we certainly know that, what we know about the Vimanas and sort of the expansions of the Aryan Empire and so forth. And
Right.
yeah, that would have been in that area, and I'm sure there's all kinds of interesting artifacts of that kind of. But I haven't heard about that. Everybody tells me this stuff, and I go,
I have
I
it
got
in
one
my
more thing to
email.
look up.
I'll give it to
Please,
you.
yeah, I'm fascinated by that.
Okay, super. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody else have a question they'd like to ask Randy?
Randy, would you tell us about rock and roll, about how music wasn't used on your planet?
My planet? This is my planet. I know what you mean, and so to answer that question, no. So while I was on Mars in the MDF, so you're not allowed media, music, television, any of that, but the main reason why you're not allowed music is because they don't want you to have memory associations with something that you might clue into later. Because if you came back to Earth and you heard a song that made you think of living in the barracks on Mars, that might make you remember things that they didn't want you to remember. So yeah, they were like, no connection there, no music, no Christmas carols, no singing. Stop it right now, no singing. Yeah, so not allowed. No music.
Have you done past life regression? Have you tried hypnosis and to recall any of this stuff?
It's not necessary for me. I mean, I can do full theta states at will. So yeah, I mean, I can access all of that.
How long
at
did it
will.
take you to develop that once you started to recall things?
Well, I mean, it's really a skill that I started practicing when I was like 10 or 11.
Mhm.
So really, by the time I was an adult, it was just a skill that I had. So, but again, I've said 20-year tour, 20-year healing process. There's no question that, I get back home and 20 years of really sorting out a lot of ugly meat grinder stuff before I felt like I could be a whole person again. So, I mean, always cleanup work. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it was easily, 20 plus.
You have an amazing mind, an amazing amount of encyclopedic information, and we really appreciate what you've given us tonight. It's been a real pleasure to have you here.
I feel very blessed that after the meat grinder my brain has been through, that it does function as well as it does, and if anything, that's a testimony to the people that
I think it's
designed
doing
it.
very well. Wouldn't you all agree? I can't take credit for that. If anything, it's just a testament to the people who designed and built me that they did a good job. So, we'll send them a letter of thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Any other final questions? This is your last opportunity. So would you like this man to come back again?
Yeah.
You have an open invitation to come back again. We would love to have you back.
Hopefully next time it won't be raining cats and dogs on the drive up.
We can't make that promise.
Well, I'm from Eugene, so rain I get, it's cool, but this was, a little much.
This is
for me.
intense. Yeah. All right, how about a big hand for Randy Cramer?